He told me a long story about these two kids he's here with. They were being mercilessly bullied, and his teacher saw that Al had a big heart, but was also fiercely protective, so she asked him to watch out for them. Not just really sweet evidence of his character, but the reality is he'd been dressing like this forever. Always had his shirt tucked in and always shined his boots. All that old-fashionedness, though, sort of belied the fact that he was extremely interested in looking at everything with a very inclusive lens. You know, there are a lot of things I could say about Al that they sound like cliches, but they just aren't when it comes to him. He was truly one of a kind. He was called the one, the only Al Fowl for a reason. It's a setup, baby. Setup, baby. Keep them all running, baby. Keep them all running. Keep them all running, baby. Keep them all running. Keep them all running, baby. Keep them all. He worked within a pretty classic vernacular of like classic country, classic rock and roll, like Americana. But it really didn't sound like anything else. He grew up in Hyde Park in Boston in the 80s, around a lot of violence, a lot of racism, and abject poverty, and overcame that. And, you know, left Boston, went to New York for a while, got involved in the punk scene, but always had an affection for country music. He loved going to the library, and he would check out every single book he could get on the history of country music. He was very self-educated in general that way. Didn't like a lot of things about classic masculinity. You know, we lived at Casa Libre, which is basically a queer feminist artist compound, and he fit right in, you know, like our lesbian landlord loved him instantly, and she was the one that ended up marrying us a few years later.
I present to you Hannah and Al, wife and husband. These two are going to just take a minute to look at each other.
We got engaged in December of 2018, and then had to reschedule a couple of times, and the pandemic happened, and then he got sick, and we just, you know, didn't know what we were gonna do, and then one night we were talking about it, and we decided we still wanted to get married. When he was first diagnosed, the estimate we were given by the oncologist was that he had an 80% chance of survival. We thought this was gonna be a rotten thing that he was gonna go through, and it was gonna be a hard year, but that we'd be on the other side of it, and it would just be another difficult thing that Al had lived through in his difficult life and triumphed over. People really believe that about Al for good reason. He seemed like someone that you couldn't knock down with something like that. We had to wait for him to heal from surgery, and then he started radiation, and he was getting daily radiation treatments for a couple of months. And then he started chemotherapy on top of that. All of those things combined were as difficult as it sounds. I mean, I think they certainly prolonged his life a bit. And in between that, we tried immunotherapy treatments. Those actually kept it at bay for a little while. We bought a little bit of time, and during that time that he was on immunotherapy, that's when he was getting into painting and able to get a little bit of quality of life. He was very depressed. Who wouldn't be if you're someone that loves life that much, you know? Like, he was We were really happy. We bought this little house and fixed it up and filled it with beautiful furniture he made, and life was really beautiful.
Still going.
No, it's not. Okay, well, jeez. Cat's messing up the bed. So the bedroom, we actually, when he got sick and I knew that we were gonna be in here a lot with him recovering, I decided that I just wanted to make it all black and white because that just seemed soothing. About a year before Al died, we hired Stacy Snyder from Farewell Consulting. Death doulas do extraordinary work in bridging a lot of those gaps in care in the American healthcare system. They offer support to the person who's dying and the family all on the way. We eventually asked, about all the questions about end of life, including what would our options be if the suffering was so great that Al wanted assistance with dying. And unfortunately, it's not available to people in Arizona. We looked into possibly going to New Mexico or going to Oregon, which would have been close to my family. And very quickly, it became clear that we actually didn't have any options. And Al was disintegrating rapidly. His condition was getting worse and worse all the time. I had to eventually step away from work to care for him full time. And my friend Mel Mason, who also happens to be a nurse, reached out to me, and I don't know what I would have done without her.
I had seen Al play music in town for years. He's just one of those, he almost felt like a mythical creature in many ways, and if you've seen him play, you understand that.
Well, ain't no use of me having a band anyhow.
And it's hard to see when you are acutely aware of the energy that he had exuded at those shows and in the way he tells stories at the shows. And he didn't just play music. It was like a whole persona package deal. It was like an experience. It wasn't just a show. To care for somebody who had so much energy and so much life, the amount of medication that he required just to get a moment's peace, it was shocking to me. You're given a certain amount of tools to work with, and everyone did their absolute best, and it just felt like it wasn't enough.
Many people have a personal story that makes them interested in the Right to Die movement. With me, it was a former spouse who became paraplegic due to cancer. He had 16 months in hospice. The basic definition, it's a medical practice for terminally ill patients who have less than 6 months to live, who ask for a prescription filled by a compound pharmacy to end their life if and when they choose. It's not something that happens easily, even in the states where it's legal. A full 30% of the people who qualify and go through all the steps don't end up taking the medication. So in some way, it just makes them feel better that they have it. In the states where it's not legal, people end up ending their lives in very violent ways. We're a big gun culture. The opposition says if you have hospice and you have palliative care, you don't need medical aid in dying. People say, well, we have pain management.
Sort of an early painting of his that turned into kind of mixed media. This was certainly at a time when he was absorbing the fact that the cancer that he had was going to kill him. And pain was becoming a really big issue. And so this is his prescription bottle for morphine. There are a number of different medications you can take to control terminal agitation. We were trying to calm him down so that his body could do the work that it needed to shut down and die peacefully, but we could not get that under control. Most people, when they're in the process of dying, sleep constantly. Al was not sleeping. He was awake and in pain. One of the hardest moments for me was when he was in this state of terminal agitation, and he was really kind of out of it, and all of a sudden he became more lucid for a moment, and he looked at me in the eye and he said, "Am I dying?" And I had to say, yes, my love, I'm afraid that you are. So he was very cognizant of this descent into death and this pain. The night that Al died, this is where I came. Our death doula, Stacy, got to the house, and once she was here and with his body, then I came up here and started calling people. So, come up here to catch our breath and, look at beautiful things and just take a break from how horrifying everything was.
At the top is loss of autonomy, loss of quality of life, loss of dignity. Even pain is kind of low on the scale. It's only like 26% of the people choose pain as the reason why they're making that decision. So for a lot of people, it's a line in the sand that they qualify and they're going to take the medication if they get to a certain point.
Our lack of literacy around death makes this conversation that much more difficult. So I think opening up a dialogue about the realities is only going to get us closer to making humane choices.
If this option is something that people would like to have, even if it is a choice you would not make for yourself, try to extend your circle of compassion. Like, where is that circle around you? How far out can you extend that?
I made a promise to Al when he was sick that I would be his biggest protector, that I would do everything I could to make him feel empowered about any decisions around his care, and I did that to the best of my abilities. But taking care of someone who's dying is, I think, much more difficult than a lot of people realize. Unfortunately, not only did he suffer horribly, his worst fear around that was realized in that I was traumatized. I am traumatized. I can just be going through about my day, and all of a sudden a film loop will be playing in my head of what I witnessed. So it's going to affect me for the rest of my life. I'm trying to do everything right. I'm in therapy, I'm taking it very seriously, and I'm back to work.
I'm your host, Hannah Levine, here with you every weekday from 3 until 6 p.m. Thanks so much for joining me.
Losing Al was horrible enough, but losing him that way was just so much worse. It's something that's going to affect everyone in one point or another in their lives. Al told me in no uncertain terms, if I'm able to end my life when I want that in my obituary. I want people to know that medical aid in dying is a human right. He wanted that to be a public awareness component.
Lie awake watching silhouettes. There's no change in your breathing. Is this the dawn?
For a brief moment in time, we thought we might at least be able to control the suffering, and that he could end life on his own terms, in line with who he was.
That the sun rose without warning.